Yo, what is up? This is Jeff. I've got Chip here, co-host. We're here on the chain. This isn't the roundtable. This is Tuesday night. We're kicking back and we're talking about some relaxed topics like the global economic dominance of China. What? What are we talking about? Digital currency, Libra? What the hell's going on here? I don't know, but it's all getting ready to start right now.
Welcome to On the Chain with Jeff and Chip.
What is going on tonight, Jeff? My gosh, the world is burning down. Here we are on the chain. We're holding it down. We're here for you. Our heart goes out. We are here, people. We're here for you.
And
What kind of craziness is going on in the world today?
Crazy stuff. I have no idea. All I know is that there's some insanity going on. Absolutely insane. So tonight we're going to focus in on some really amazing things like we we're talking about. I know we want to get into the Fed, but before we jump into the Fed, man, I thought it would be cool if we dive right in to the global economic crisis, the global economic dominance that China is trying to perpetrate right now as we speak, and it's pretty right out there, and it really all starts with this new China digital yuan. And I've brought it up before, and we're going to go through some crazy things tonight to really showcase where China's really, we're really coming after the U.S. dollar, and there's a lot of conversation about the replacement of the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency, digital currencies. All this stuff is all boiling over right now, and as everybody else is still sitting in their homes, China is pressing and pressing and pressing and going full steam ahead. What do you think?
Well, I think some people think it's sort of on the down low, but I don't think it's on the down low. I think it's actually very pervasive. But when everybody's sleeping at night, there's always a bear around your house or some kind of a raccoon trying to get into your stuff, and now you saw what happened if you're actually tracking what's happening in the Gulf of Mexico. There's lots of Navy ships going on down there right now. They are it's maneuvering around. There's stuff happening, but nobody knows why, because, well, everyone's sitting in their home right now.
That's crazy.
It's weird, isn't it? That's weird.
We're
here. Listen, as the last defender of that lemon tree, man, you got a sacred oath and a duty, man, because if anything happens, that's symbolic, that lemon tree, right?
It is. That's it.
Defender of the lemon tree, man. You got to defend it. What's up, Jungle? Jungle's in here. What's
lemonade.
up? What's up, Jungle?
What's up, man?
Jungle, what's going on? Jungle, it was very cool of you to call in last night with Jerry, man. That was so badass.
That was nice.
You know what happened? It's like a bunch of people wanted to come in and they're like, "Oh, I can't follow Jungle, man. There's no way." They're like, "Oh no, man. The legend? No. Even Legendary did not want to follow." Isn't that weird? I don't blame him, man. I don't think I would like to follow myself, I'll be honest with you.
Matt LaRue, check this out. Boom. A trash panda.
Oh, hey now.
There you go. Now we're firing it up. Things are getting hot. Things are getting heated.
La Roche is fired up right now on this whole thing, on the old trash panda.
All right, so check this out. All right, so here you have China's digital yuan imminent, and they're talking about it's going to happen within a month. They're thinking about rolling this out, and it's going to be rolled out in 4 different cities. They're going to control it. They want to dominate it a little bit. But what's really insane about it, and I talked about this before, and you've got Starbucks, you've got Subway, and you've got McDonald's that are also going to be participants in this new digital yuan. I find it really troubling, especially on the heels of the Chinese ambassador to the U.S. Just a few days ago or last week, he was talking about, and this was Let me see. This was on Bloomberg. There we go. I was looking for where it's posted, and
Bloomberg.
he says, and he's urging to seriously rethink ties with the U.S. And I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation coming out of there right now, and it just doesn't seem like things are moving kind of in the right direction. And here's something right here. This was when Xi Jinping spoke at. This was a quote that came out of Asia Crypto Today. He spoke at the Politburo meeting in October of last year. He was telling party members that they need to embrace digital finance and blockchain. Now, get this, in order to get an edge over other major countries. Then the Research Institute leader Mu also gave his reasoning for the currency's creation, saying it's to protect our monetary sovereignty and legal currency status. We need to plan for a rainy day. What do you think about that? I mean, this is the idea that's kind of fermenting over there. I get the idea of the sovereign currency, monetary sovereignty, but it seems like, they want to get an edge. They want a little dominance. But here's the key right here. So for many, the currency represents a growing shift in Chinese dominance and is a direct threat to the U.S. hegemony, meaning superpower, and only superpower, and only. Champions of this argument are buoyed by the rumors of the token being rolled out across the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, potentially targeting the 70 countries a part of the scheme. Thoughts?
Well, here's what's weird, right? So I'm looking through the news last week, and what I noticed was that people are angry right now. They're not happy, because when they realize that their real freedoms, they're grumpy, man. A lot of people are grumpy. I have to deal with grumpy people in my business, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, I get it, man. I get it. You know what usually solves that problem? A good old swig of bourbon usually gets that thing erased pretty quick. But I was reading about Germany, and Germany's not happy. Germany was one of the first countries to offer help to China when this whole pandemic went down, right? They said, hey, guys, we know you need a helping hand. We got a hand for you. We'll help you. But they said no, and the U.S. said, yeah, we'll send doctors. We got some cool people we can send over. They're like, no, we don't want to do that. What ends up happening when something like that happens? Well, now they're filing lawsuits, Jeff. Everybody is levying lawsuits. You have Germany now that's getting ready to file. I saw something about, who was it in Florida that's getting ready to file? There's something, the state of the Florida, was it the controller or the
CFO in Florida announced that the state of Florida is getting a lawsuit together against China based on all the losses, and it's a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit out of Florida, and there's huge amounts of revenue lost in all these states. And man, it's crazy, because the one thing that people don't realize is that we're in a state of war right now. We've been talking about this black swan event. We've been talking about the potential of a global reset. A lot of people, and to me, it always seemed like it was far-fetched. It was just too far out there. It's not going to happen like that.
It was
right?
2 months ago.
It was 2 months ago. It just didn't seem like it was real. But here we know that we're in a battle right now. We know that we have the Patriots against this deep state initiative that seems to be becoming more and more true to form. But whoever thought, that this would be the black swan event, that you would have this a health crisis that is now spread into an economic crisis, that the government in China is now attempting to dominate and not only rewrite the history of the event, because they've already kind of whitewashed a lot of the past records that they were a direct cause of, but this is all from their perspective in a method, in a mode of dominating. So like you've all said, the cabal trying to maintain their dominance through China's digital currency, but there's so much more to this picture. With everything that's going on, you think we have this health initiative, health crisis, and yet the Chinese government is ratcheting down on the exportation of masks. So can you imagine right now that when you go to China, and right now they're the biggest source for masks, and you say, I want to order masks, and we're talking about 1 million, 5 million, whatever the quantity might be, but you go over there, you want to order them, you know what, the first thing, where are you from? Oh, US? Oh, sorry, no inventory. No inventory. But oh no, I'm from the UK. Oh, how many do you want? So what's happening now over here in the US is that product inventory has to be moved from China to Europe to the US. And here's the cap of all of it. And get into more of this, but China is actually the Chinese government is taking 90% ownership in all of these corporations.
It's a little bit suspicious. It almost seems as though, like, how did they get the supply up so quick to be able to feed into the chain? It almost seems to me that it was like, let's say it was preconceived. Let's not go there. I know Rain wants to go there, but let's not get so crazy. But let's just say if you are prepared early January and you start throttling up production on a lot of things, all of a sudden there's a lot of ventilators flooding the market that don't work, right? And then if you're the UK, gotta be careful how I word this. If you're the UK and you order antibody tests like 60 million, say you get one. Everyone gets an antibody test, right? Everyone gets one, and then what happens? Well, they're faulty. And where'd they come from? You know where they came from, Jeff. And so nothing can be tolerated. And then in the US early days, I mean, it looks like the US was caught off guard, right? Nobody knew what to do. But what did they end up having? Well, it turns out a lot of the tests they had, more than 50% of them were false positives, false negatives, whatever. They were producing a positive when it didn't really happen, And I'll tell you right now, I mean, one of the scariest things for me is, my mom right now is in the hospital. Today I get a text from my dad. Nobody can see her. She's at ground zero. And today I get a text from my dad saying that the doctor called. She has some stuff going on with the lungs. They're going to test her for the coronavirus. And they tested her. She came out negative. But I'm like, it's probably not the one place you really want to go. You don't want to go to ground zero, right? Because you go in all like, hey, I got this problem. I got this, it hurts, doctor, when I do this. Doctor says don't do that. So, but you go in there, you get fixed up, and next thing you know, there's something weird going on, And so I wonder about all this stuff coming over and the entire world being put on its knees when really it could have been stopped, And we think about the digital currency here. I mean, what's the easiest way to get to the public, really anywhere? Starbucks, McDonald's, right? If you want to get into the public eye, public adoption, I mean, what do you think about Starbucks? I mean, I'll be honest with you. Back in the day, and that was like about maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, back in the day, I would use this and I'd like ping, and I would say, what are all these people waiting in line? I just walk in and grab my stuff. Well, now the line for Starbucks is wrapped around the corner. It's like I can't even use this. You can order with this, but you can't. But now, what do you imagine that's going to look like in the integration, though? When they say Starbucks, easier to say Starbucks than some of these other organizations. But what's the actual integration? How do you see the integration happening?
The integration of, man, it's so here's the scary part, and this is what I think about, is that we have, they want to implement this digital currency, and they want to utilize the rollout. You think the easiest way to get into the American economy or the global economy isn't through Chinese companies, because they don't have this access. But if you get in through an American franchise, now why single out Starbucks, McDonald's, and Subway? Because they're everywhere. Doesn't matter what country in the world you go to, except if you go to Israel, you're not going to find a Starbucks. A lot of European cities have Starbucks, but many don't. But it's because the coffee's just too good elsewhere, so you're not going to go to Starbucks. But anyhow, Starbucks, McDonald's, Subway is in every single country. And if you want to implement a little bit of the global economic dominance through your digital currency, and you want to start the process, start it at home, but start it in an American franchise, and now you move it to the next level. Now, the concern that I have is, what kind of things can they hide, or what kind of little I don't want to say bugs or virus or whatever, what can they put into the code of
Jeff.
the digital currency? But let's say, put that aside, but just the point, now they're in the currency. Now imagine a Starbucks said, oh, this is so great. Now our Starbucks, and I talked about this the other day, or McDonald's bucks, or whatever those bucks might be, are now going to be utilized in the US market. Not a big fan.
Yeah, so Jungle Link says China wants to deal with Iran without issues and SWIFT, and this is what everybody wants. This is one of the reasons we see, another thing we had planned too of getting Oh, sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, I'm having a
Interrupt the
conversation.
stream. There's a stream going on right now. But anyway, yeah, and Jungle's right on, spot on about this because, listen, I mean, when you have an embargo or something like that, Swift's kind of caught up in the whole thing. But, imagine a major military conflict and you're cut off from the monetary system. It would be an unacceptable risk. By the way, that's a Jungle Inc. comment. It just made me sound smart. But no, that you really have to look at something like that because what if you do? What if there's something major going down, right? Like and erupting. I think right now, like this is viral warfare, right? We are in viral warfare, right? Because we have a new thing. And if you're a doctor and you come out with a, just your opinion, like, hey man, I'm looking at the numbers and I'm analyzing it and I'm marking it up, and then all of a sudden that video gets banned, and then, but if it's on a news report, what happens to it, Jeff? If it's part of a news report,
What's part of a news
the
report?
video, yeah, the two doctors talking,
Just oh no, yeah. So the news report sticks, everything else disappears.
just
So
goodbye.
it's a second or third time their video just disappears
Just
off
nobody
into the
knows
wind
why.
somewhere. YouTube, oh look, it's not on YouTube anymore, over and over and over again. But yeah, but the news report's still there, as far as we know. It was there earlier.
Yeah, as far as we know,
Crazy
and
stuff.
and listen, as the defenders, and I'm pulling myself in this with you, as the defenders of the lemon tree, we have a sacred oath, man. We got to make sure that this works because you know what happens when they cut our power? There's no more streaming. No one's watching anymore. That's it when it comes down to it.
Yep.
But on the bigger picture, when we look globally, and I think
That's another
Jungle
one.
was alluding to
Nobody
this
sees
whole thing, that when we look on a bigger picture, China sent garbage masks to Canada. Yeah, all garbage. Yeah, you know what? They're fake.
Fake.
Peter
They're
Voss, a
fake.
nice that is so spot on. They're fake, and you know what?
It's horrible.
They're
Horrible.
endangering lives with this stuff. It was one thing when you get like a knockoff, like it's like, hey man, I got my Apple, earpods here, my Pros, and I'm all psyched. And then, oh wait a minute, you can
Except you're an
buy,
Apple. An Apple.
yeah,
Apple earpods.
you can buy one, but I mean, so what? Nobody dies if I get a faulty one. By the way, I'll be honest with you, like the ones that I sleep with at night, because I always have one in my ear. There's always something going on. I don't care if I roll over them or if I step on them or I swallow them accidentally. They're $25. They're Chinese, and they're replaceable. I don't care about that. But now we're talking about masks. We're talking about potentially hurting somebody, right? So that's a big thing for me.
So this is a big deal though, the garbage mass, because it's not just that they're garbage, but they're fake, and the fact that the government over there is actually dominating and controlling the flow of the mass is really telling. So, like I said, you go over there and you want to buy them, they won't sell them to the US. The product that came over here. So there's about, let's say 60 to 70 legitimate companies over in China that are making masks legitimately with full certification. There's about 7,000 that are fraudulent.
What?
7,000 manufacturers. So it's like the Wild West right now. It's insane, and so we're in a position right now where we have a direct attack against our economic well-being. Now, what are the methodologies of destabilizing an economy? You think about, some of the things that could be implemented to, really control us. One of them is to destroy and knock out the economy, knock out your means of economic production. The other one is to destroy your healthcare system, and the third one is to disrupt your food chain. What are the three things that have happened over the past few weeks? And China really didn't have any part in those three directly at this point, although they started it. However, it's interesting. Right.
It's glorious how they blow it up, and then you start seeing, it's amazing how this stuff spreads too. One minute I'm sitting here minding my own business, and I'm like looking, and I'm realizing that how does everybody at Tyson processing chicken? They're working pretty close together on a line. They're processing the chicken. Next thing you know, everything's fine and dandy. The next thing you know, oh, somebody's sick, and then all of a sudden nobody, the meat packing plants and everything else. But I think what people don't realize is there's an incredible amount of beef and chicken, everything else in reserves, in coolers, that are frozen. And I think a lot of this has to do with fear. As soon as people get nervous, right?
Fear.
And let's look at it, right? So we had a little bit of green today, right? Mr. B puts out something funny. He said he said something like, I think XRP's having a tailgate party, but didn't invite Bitcoin. I was
Oh,
like,
is that
listen,
why it went to
man.
22 cents?
I was like, listen, man, 20 to 22 cents is not exactly my form of tailgate party. My tailgate party is bedlam, right? It's footballs being tossed, it's open coolers, it's 15 different beer choices. This is what I consider a party. I was like, 2 cents, I'm okay with it. It's something nice. I'm happy to see it. But all of a sudden that ponies up to 25, and I'm like, okay, let's get that party started, people. Let's start cranking it, right? So
Yeah.
when we get back to the whole XRP conversation, we look at the problems that XRP can potentially solve and look in a scenario where we are right now, right? Most people are worried about toilet paper. It's like, hey, I get it. Everyone went out and went crazy with the toilet paper. Now, for a while, you couldn't buy meat in a store. Then you couldn't buy, red meat. Then you could buy chicken. The weird thing, though, Jeff, is in my stores, there was always plenty of pork. And I don't eat pork, but did you notice this? There was like a whole section, just a one
There's a,
vertical of pork. I don't know if you
yeah.
guys noticed that, but it was weird.
No. No.
Now look at this.
No.
XRP Hodler for Life says, realistically, the only governments that can sustain a war without imports would be China and the U.S. All others have heavy financial needs of imports or currency. What are your thoughts about
That's
that?
true. That's 100%
It's
true.
spot on.
The U.S., China internally, obviously, they manufacture a lot. I think the one thing that we've identified, though, with all of this, there's always some silver linings, is that the U.S. is far too reliant on import from China.
Yeah.
The fact that we've been moving all of our manufacturing over there, our pharmaceutical manufacturing over to China, that just doesn't make any sense. Why would we move pharmaceutical manufacturing over there? So it's that silver lining that allows us to really identify that we need to start moving all this stuff home. And what really hits home, I think, is when we start looking at what China's real plans are in terms of the digital economy. Now, one of the other things that came out this week is and this is so this was the president of the Shanghai Gold Exchange called for a new super sovereign currency to offset the global dominance of the US dollar. All this stuff's been happening, like coming out, bam, 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 over the past week. But it's been fermenting and kind of building up over the past few weeks as everyone else's economies have been stagnating. We're seeing China increasing production exponentially. Part of the objective of shutting down mass distribution is to try to stifle the rise of production back to regular levels in the U.S. So if you can try to keep the fear in place and withhold the mass distribution, then you're thinking you're not going to allow people back into work and you're not going to get the economic production, whereas China is allowing mass movement over into Europe because they want to try to start up Europe first to try to get some goodwill back. So there's a lot of these elements that as we start identifying and understanding how it functions, but sorry to rant on this, but here, so they want this new super sovereign currency to offset global dominance of the US dollar, which he predicted would decline long term while gold prices rally. And then Wang Zhenying, who heads the world's largest physical spot gold exchange, he said the global clout of the United States will reduce while the status of the European Union and China will rise in global affairs.
Geez, that's not a piece of propaganda at all. That sounds, of
That's a
course,
lot.
but of course though, Jeff. I mean, why wouldn't somebody want that? Look at this, Tasuku Hojo, Nobel Peace Prize winner. He worked for 4 years in that lab, and he said that it's not natural. I'm cherry picking words here. It had to be artificially created, and now the personnel from that particular place are no longer with us. And funny enough, that's not the only one. There's a lot of medical doctors. There's one that I follow on YouTube who's into virology, and he's a PhD, and he said early days, he's going back to January. He looked at the makeup of this and said it would never mutate in this fashion. I got to be honest with you, most of the stuff he said was like 100 miles over my head. I was like, I don't know what the guy, but it sounded like legit. It sounded like a legit thing, and I have to worry about when we get to a point, where do we stop, right? Where do we as human beings on planet Earth, when do we say enough is enough? I mean, some of us in the U.S. have been out, gallivanting, we're this close to each other. Here's a face and here's a face. We're like, hey man, we're protesting. We don't like that. Turns out people don't like staying in their house like all day. People want to do stuff. I applauded Kemp, the governor of Georgia, just because simply he was like, we got to open up things, people. We got to do it. And what did he open up? He opened up tattoo parlors.
That's important.
Because, you can't do that at 6 feet away. And the other thing that was pretty positive, and I think I'm down with this too, is the whole hair thing. I mean, my wife and I are like, well, it'll probably take us 6 months to get an appointment after this. They'll be booked like so crazy. But at some point you got to get a haircut. One of my colleagues, by the way, is cutting his own hair. And I'm like, man, I'll be honest with you, I thought it was better than what he was. I don't know, we were getting a cut before. He puts it on 3 and then on 2, and then he figures out how to get a haircut.
Nice.
I'm not saying I'm going to do that, but
just go nothing. Boom, it's gone. Look at Evol wants to put up the source link for that. So go ahead. I don't know if you can post it down there. If it doesn't post, then,
yeah, you can. The problem is Evol is I don't think you can post links in here. But I'll tell you what, you can post it down in the chat. Go ahead and post it in the description down below. When you put it in the description, we will be able to read it, and then anybody else can. It's a weird thing.
Oh yeah, put it as a comment.
Put it as a comment. Say, hey, here's a source article. Put your original thing there. I want to shout out a few people, Jeff, because I always like to do that. So we have Annalise, Kryptonian. I don't know what. Yeah, so she says hi, Jeff and Chip. We got Matt LaRoche is in here. Vet Bro. He likes vets. Rain is in here. XRP Carolina. Of course, you saw him right here last night with our very own Jerry Hall. And who else is in here? Evol throwing out some really good stuff. He's got that source link. If you guys want that, check below.
Column. Thanks for the super chat yesterday.
Yeah, very cool. And Doc, I always like to say, like, what's up, Doc? I have to say it every time I say that. I don't know if it connects. It says Doc Column, but I'm like, what's up, Doc? Because she is a doctor. And, I like her commentary, too. It's always been pretty spot on when she shares stuff. You got to look up to the medical profession because, I'm a doctor of madness. And there you go. Hey, Hot, I'll ask you. Go ahead. You ask me. Go ahead. I'll listen.
All right. I got a question for you.
Please.
So Rain has a question for you.
What do you got?
It's a secret question. So
not this.
Get ready for this one. Ready? Ask Chip. Oh, wait. I can't say that. I'm not. Okay. I'm pretending I'm Rain. Chip. What do you think about what I said about XRP being held in reserves around the world per Austin Steinbart?
You know what, man? I got to tread lightly here. Austin Steinbart. Let me see how I can say this. I don't know. I personally don't give any credence to the guy. I think he's kind of I'm trying to use nice words here tonight, Jeff, but Austin Steinbart, I know Rain's real heavy and big on it, thinking he's part of Q and all that. He's not. I don't think he's anybody. I think he's just a guy who likes a lot of attention. He enjoys attention, and that's pretty much it. Now, look, who wouldn't be thrilled here? I don't care if you're into XRP or not, but who would not be thrilled to hear that XRP is being held in reserves around the world, okay? Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible, but you got to look at if you have the circulating supply, what kind of reserves are out there? Ripple runs basically on a monthly, I would say a contribution, but they release $1 billion. They either sell it or they don't. They put it back in reserves. So where has this reserves been coming from? It's just a real honest answer, because I have to look at the circulating supply, who's holding what. You got to look at the whales. So what kind of supply would be circulating? What would be in reserves actually? And Ripple can't, unless they change it, unless they have some agreement, they have to put it out there. They're not allowed to say, you know what, we were hanging out in the conference room last week. We had an idea. We're like, hey man, why don't we take this extra 50 billion we have? Why don't we just start shooting it all over the place? Like, they can't do that in that sense, right? So I don't know. Does it make a lot of sense to you, Jeff? Okay, Jeff says no. I wouldn't mind some reserves in my pocket either. I wouldn't mind that.
50 million. Put 50 million in my pocket. My pocket was pretty big.
Yeah, listen, it's great. Rain, if Steinbart's saying it. I don't put a lot of trust in Steinbart. I just, from what I've seen, I'm not going to say anything. I just don't have a great opinion of the guy. And that's just me because of what I've seen and what I've read. But you know what? Look, I think we'd all be thrilled to hear something along those lines. Look at Doc saying, cool. U.S. Doc Callum says, U.S. companies first moved to Mexico, then to China for cheaper labor. Now they're moving to Thailand, Vietnam, and India. They ain't trying to come back here. But you know what, Doc? I will say this. The UMCA is going to turn. If you look at the details of the USMCA, this basically got rid of the old trade agreement, and what it's designed to do is turn North America into a powerhouse, right? Because now they can bring it back, they can bring the labor back to Mexico, but they have to pay a fair wage. They can't pay ridiculous things. I think the minimum is like $10 to $12 an hour. And if you look at it, the way it's structured, and the reason Canada, the US, Mexico especially was signed on, this goes back to something that Jeff's pointed out before, is that if Mexico's economy gets rolling, if North America is for North America being great, Canada,
That'd be awesome.
the U.S., but also Mexico, we take care of our neighbors. If our neighbors can give a group hug, and I look at it like this: if you have Canada and you have the U.S. and we have solidarity, this USMCA will turn us into a powerhouse. We got rid of all that.
Amazing.
We got rid of all that garbage, but I look at this. What are we seeing now? We're going to start seeing stuff come back, and I'll make a little prediction here. You can go to Thailand, and I know I don't think you guys realize the scope of what's happened and all the companies that have left the market. If you look at the market and you see that how many people in China, US based from all over the world, because it was inexpensive labor, when they actually went and left, because I know companies like, for example, I know 2 companies, they pulled out almost all their stuff. Now, American companies learned something very unique. When they tried to source stuff or try to source the supply chain, they realized they didn't have control over the factories. They realized they didn't have control. Why? Because it was being controlled by the government, right? So they really didn't have anything. So when the companies leave, and Doc, you've got a really good point here, is that when they started pulling everything out, they're moving to other places. I don't see, you know how I'm a big Apple fanboy. You know I'm Apple fanboy. And I know Jungle is too. Look, I don't see how, in what universe, Apple can stay where they are, stay put in China. Now I know the supply chain, if you look at how it's sourced from all over the world, it comes from everywhere. I just do not see them staying there. And I'm kind of looking at this from a point of bring it back to Mexico. But when you see in Austin, Texas, the new MacBook Pro is being made there, if you had told me that about a year ago, Jeff, I would have said, hell no, that's not going to happen.
Oh no, there also wouldn't be a global economic meltdown. So a year
Solid
ago.
point.
Yeah, so lots of things can happen. So yeah, I mean, it's all possible. It's all good. So check this out. So one of the things that you brought to my attention today was the Fed. The Fed. I'm trying to find it. The Senate Banking Committee takes action on embattled Fed nominee Judy Shelton next week. What's up with that? What's going on with this? What's happening?
Well, I think one of the most brilliant moves that ever happened is, when something like this burns down, and you can't let a good, what's that line again? You cannot let a good crisis go to waste. Yeah, that's it.
Never.
You never do, and nobody will. And the thing about this is when you have all 50 states declaring emergencies, you get granted certain powers. And when you bring the Federal Reserve into the Treasury, and your new boss is Steve Mnuchin with those cool glasses and everything, and that weird goofy smile he does, he does that every once in a while. He's standing behind. It was an oppressor today. I happened to flip through YouTube, and he was back there giggling and I thought it was pretty funny. But you look at Mnuchin, he's the new man, right? So now what's interesting? What do we know about Judy Shelton? We know that she is all about gold, a gold standard.
Gold.
Now let's dive into a little QAnon here. What have they been saying forever? QAnon has been stating forever that gold will destroy the Fed. Not necessarily in the sense that it's going to take it down or supply, but more about bringing it back to something that's real, right? Because right now, when people tell you, and you have friends and they go like, oh, I know cryptocurrencies, but what is it? What's it backed by? All you have to say is, hey, do you have $1 in your pocket? What's that backed by? It's backed by a promise. It's backed by an agreement. We all just agree that it's worth something, right? So if you look at Bitcoin, and we take a look at Bitcoin, you look at people like the Store of Value. Well, yeah, it's been more successful in 11 years. Bitcoin's been more successful 11 years than the Dow Jones, than gold, than everything, right? And Peter Schiff doesn't like that story. He's like the last defender of the gold bar. Not a bad position. The lemon tree's maybe like a few steps below that.
Just a few. I like what? The lemon tree. Oh yeah, yeah.
You see how I worked the lemon tree in, Jeff?
Lemon tree, a little bit above the gold, but that's okay. So this is what's crazy. So we were talking about China, right? And we mentioned this that the Shanghai gold boss wants a super sovereign currency for post-crisis times. So here they are. Is it gold? Is it, gold backed? What's the full implication of that? And so while you have China trying to unleash something that's going to unseat the US dollar in its dominant position as a reserve currency, a trade currency, and really being in a dominant position overall. China's over there pecking away. They're trying to do their thing. And then we see this with the Fed. Chip, I think that's just is the timing unusual, or is the timing kind of on par with expectation?
I gotta say it's a little bit suspect, but I think it's been planned for some time, and there's a lot of evidence to support that. By the way, our TB Dutchie just entered the room. Boom, he's in here. We
Boy.
have DNI. Now, this is pretty cool. I just had up there a few seconds ago that Anna actually ordered two shirts by, if we looked at XRP Carolina, he was sitting right here. Was it here or the other day? I don't know what days, but anyway, he had the cool brim going on. He had the shirt action going on. Sorry, this is I don't know if you guys knows the band Revolution, but big favorite band of mine that I like to watch and see tour. But I would say that man, what was I talking about? I was talking about something. Anyway, yeah. So this is what Rain says. The Fed is already toast. Now we kind of knew this was happening. I've been talking about this for a long time. A lot of people out there have been, but the Fed really is. Let's face it. You cannot expect a system that was built on debt to go this many years from 1913. How long is it going to go? Right? 100 years? It wasn't designed around that. A system built on debt, not good for people, not good for us. And it's time for the switch up. I think we're all feeling something's going to come. I think we're all feeling a switch of some kind that it's happening. Uh-oh, Lebanon's getting torched. What's going on with that?
Did you see what happened? They were rioting. I think they were moving in on the banks. Didn't they like try to burn down the bank or something? Something crazy. There was a little bit of chaos in Lebanon because of what's happening.
Yeah, here's another point too. Yeah, Jungle
chaos.
brought this up. So Doc Callum says China wants a currency to work silently around SWIFT. Yeah, they all do, really. It's not just them. I mean, you got to look at almost everybody's secretly wishing. But you know what's funny about that, Jeff? Here's the funny thing about that. They want this and they want that and all this other thing. You know what? When the U.S. wins, and we used to have this saying back in the day with my buddy and I, we had a thing, and when we were Bills fans, we were like, when the Bills win, we win, right? It was like, everything's great, it's glorious, you're happy. Now, when you look at when the dollar wins, everybody wins, right? When the U.S. goes back to being good, everything's spread. Now, what happens if it's reversed, Jeff? What happens if that flips? What happens if it's no longer the U.S.?
Man, we don't want to even go there. I can't even imagine.
But what if it's not? Let's just go on a little scenario here. What if it turns into China? Okay, look what they're doing though. Look at the dominance we're seeing, right? They are basically ahead of the U.S. when it comes to. We're talking about a digital dollar on a card that you could put and clean your ears with. What the hell is that going to do for us?
I got it. No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, what if it shifts, and what if that becomes
shift?
China. I'll say it like Trump says it, China.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? I can't, but this is the world they want to live in, and so the people have this misconception that everything that's happening is, either you're looking at it from a micro perspective, just focused on the US, Democrat, Republican, and that's what it's all about. It has nothing to do with that. You have to pull back from a global perspective. What's happening right now from this economic battle. Again, it's more of a warlike environment that we're finding ourselves in, because you have on one side, it's not just the U.S., but you have this patriot movement against this deep state, and you've got China. You have all these different parties. I was talking about it earlier, but if you think about it, like Chip's saying, think about World War II and falling to the Nazi Party. If they would have had their move, and they would have actually dominated, in their different campaigns, the world would look a lot different today than it does, because at the end of the day, freedom was victorious across the board. But now, as we're moving into this next stage, you have a communist country that runs in a very totalitarian way. It's communist, obviously, but they've allowed a fraction of it to exist in a capitalist form within the economy, but then they become ruthless in nature in terms of how they control and dominate from a business perspective. But they also are very loose when it comes to trademarks. They have no respect for trademarks. So they're going to copy and copy and copy without any R&D behind their product. I'm not even sure where I'm going with that part of it, from where your question was, and as you threw it over to me, Chip. But I'm seeing, a lot of concern, because why would we want to live in a world that would be dominated in such a fashion that when if things kind of go in a direction where the government decides, oh, you know what, we need to nationalize the economy again, and that's exactly what they did. They've nationalized large swaths of the economy. Not only when your company gets too big, they take over a seat on the board, but now all these companies making masks and medical devices, they've taken over 90% of their company. So now they've nationalized those companies, and it's just moving in a direction that I couldn't even imagine what it would look like over here, Europe, elsewhere. Forget about it.
Yeah,
Was that a crazy rant? I don't even.
I think it turns into a big mess. I have to go in here, but listen, there was something really important here that I needed to address here. See if I can find it. So this is something too. So the Lebanese pound pegged at around 1,500 to the dollar, lost 3 times its value since October, reaching 4,500 to the dollar in the black markets this week. Steep drop from 3,000 just 2 weeks ago. Just look at how that's being blown up right there. And we have digital nomad investor in here as well. And Connie was having some issues with her DMs. Anybody else noticing that? I just want a public service announcement. I don't know. I noticed all kinds
on Twitter?
of. Yeah.
On Twitter, I just tried sending a DM and it was offline.
So yeah. So you know what, Connie? There might be something going on there. By the way, I tried to send a tweet here. I don't know. There might be something happening there. I don't know. There might be some kind of weird stuff. It's not going to be a government, says Chris Swell. I don't know what that comment's around right there. Alex G's happy. Look at this. Boom. Smileys and happy faces. Happy days are here again. Well, I'll tell you what, Jeff, as it's getting hotter in Florida, at some point I'm going to have to get that window closed, because I'm cranking the air full blast and it doesn't seem to change.
Just going straight out the window. Still waiting for a bird to fly in or something.
That'd be fun to see a bird flying around the background. That'd be nice.
Just keep them away from my lemons.
So let's read this from Annalise. How far after the BTC halving would we have the bull run? The previous stat says that around 6 to 8 months. Do you think it would be the same as before? A lot of people are more aware of crypto. What say you, Jeff?
I think so. I think a lot of people are aware of crypto right now, and things are definitely changing. I don't know if the halving is going to have as much of an impact as people think. I don't know. It's time will tell. Do you think that's going to have as much of an impact?
Well, I think, coming up on a 4-year cycle here, I think, if we look back in the 4-year cycles, there's a lot of people talking about that. I do think the next bull run is going to take people by surprise. I think we're going to be caught off guard. I think it's going to run up pretty fast and hard. And a lot of people will be coming into the marketplace, right? So you have your thousands of altcoins, but I think the real big winners are going to be the top 5, right? The top 5, you're going to have a lot of people circulating around those. And Bitcoin is going to get very, very scarce, right? So if you're holding Bitcoin, it's a good bet, in my opinion, only because, again, not financial advice, but I think you're holding something that's going to go eventually, it's going to hit 50, 60, 80, 100,000. And think of it like this. What if you're old, and people get freaked out by Bitcoin because they see it's around $7,700, it's 8,000, and like, this is a lot of what you hear about Bitcoin. The Bitcoin news is like, will it break the resistance? Can it break out? Oh, it's down, it's up, it's down. But here's what's really going to happen. That $20,000 is going to blow past 20. Could hit 40, could hit 50. Now, what if you're holding a fraction, right? What if you're only at 10%? You're still going to make a crap ton of money. And I sometimes think people don't realize that one of the greatest things about crypto, now I don't see anybody buying like, a half of XRP, because it sounds kind of silly at this point, but is it when it's 100? What's the entry point? What about when you have to have 20 XRP in a wallet somewhere, right? 20 XRP at $100 starts getting a little daunting, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, that's something different. So I kind of see that the next bull run, I'll make a prediction right here. I think by 2027, we're going to see Bitcoin well over 40,000. Is that too far away, Jeff?
2027. When is 2027? Is
It's
that
in 6.5 years. Is that too soon? Too soon? Am I too soon
too
on that
soon.
one?
I would roll it out there a little bit further.
And I think that XRP, no, I'm not sure about that. I actually think it'll well be way blown past 40,000, right? So, and I also think that XRP is going to hit 26 cents.
That's very cool. I
Yeah,
like that. I like 26 cents. And what year?
yeah.
Did you say 2027?
No, that's happening this year, Jeff. That's
Oh, this
happening
year.
this year. Yeah, that's happening this year.
Nice.
We're gonna see that this year. I'm going out on a limb, right? I mean, I do have 6 months left, so
That's right.
I think we're gonna be okay with that prediction.
All right. So what's your prediction on Libra? That's what I want to know. What's going to happen with Libra? Libra is coming to the forefront again. Here's the crazy thing. Before we get into the point of Libra, right?
Hmm.
Not that many months ago, remember they dragged them in front and they were in front of Congress and Congress, they were all sitting there, they were trying to figure out what texting was. While they had them, what's
Bitcom.
Facebook? What's Twitter? How do you Twitter on Facebook? So, so here you have them talking about Libra, but what was the one concern that they addressed about the Chinese digital currency? The one thing they said was China's going to get a head start. China's going to get to a dominant position. We don't want China to be in a dominant position. Therefore, Libra is your best alternative, right? That's the initiative we need to implement. So I just think it's interesting now that everything that they were talking about is also coming to fruition. However, now I got to find the article that I was pulling up here on Libra, but Libra is back in the news again.
But why, Jeff? What they took a drastic hard turn, and maybe that was by design, right? If you think about it, maybe because all of a sudden they're coming out saying, "Oh no, we don't want to be the currency. We want to be cool. We want to play nice with others." And I kind of think that maybe that was by design as they were looking to get in front of Congress. That I mean, somebody else has made this point out there. If they get Sonny Liu he's the guy behind VChain. If they get him in front of Congress, I mean, does nobody care? I'm like, it's like, yeah, it's cool. But now Facebook, everyone's like, Facebook, whoa, Facebook, this is exciting, right? Man, Facebook. Look, I think it actually did more good than at the time. I was a little bit miffed by it, like them coming out and blowing it up like that. But to think if they had worked it out in the background, all of a sudden throw it out there, what could have happened? It could have been a catastrophic move for them. But I think the way they did it now starts to look kind of brilliant, right? Then they pull it back a little bit. Some of the major nodes, the people they're going to pay $10 million to sort of fund this whole thing. They kind of pulled off, and it seems like it was more by design now that we look back on it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. You're going with a shock. If they would have said, "Hey, we have this great idea, but it's not going to threaten you guys." So what do? They want to, shock and awe. So they come out, here we are, boom, and it just blew up, and then they get dragged in front of Congress and all that good stuff. And here's Anthony King. Congress lashes out at Libra for digital currency, then proposes the digital dollar of their own. That's let's think about that for a second. But their digital dollar has nothing to do with blockchain and crypto, and really, it's not a true digital asset in terms of what we think of being based on the blockchain. But here's what Facebook did, and this is Libra has a brand new member, and their new member is Checkout.com, which is the first payment firm to join the Libra Association since Visa, MasterCard, and Stripe all pulled out due to regulatory concern. Now they pulled out, for reasons. Obviously, they say regulatory, but now we're starting to see some things coming back to the forefront. Do you think that now that we're kind of in this bind, is the U.S. Congress going to be more accepting of Libra, or are they going to keep their same position?
Yeah, I think that. See, I'm not so sure it's more about Libra. I think really what's happening is I think the thing that's still holding everything back. I'm not saying it doesn't matter what the move is. I think we have to go back to what's really holding everybody back, and it has to come down to custody and regulation. So when you look at Congress, what's Congress going to do? I think all bets are off until the election. I think that Really, the closer we get, and we've had a lot of distractions. Okay, the pandemic, but look at that. We have supply chain with food, and we can't do this. There's all these other things that kind of filter into the equation. And the next thing you know, November 2nd comes. I believe that's the day. November 2nd comes. We have the election, and I think largely a lot of stuff will be based on that. What new legislation is there, right? I mean, you had people in dire straits. The U.S. The people without jobs. I mean, 26 million unemployed, right? And what was Congress doing? I'll tell you what the speaker was doing. She's showing off her $30,000 refrigerators. I mean,
Do it,
you have
man.
to be tone deaf to see a line of people, wrapped around blocks out somewhere, waiting for food, and she's out there showing
Unreal.
10. And it's not just any ice cream, Jeff. It's like $10 a pint. That somehow
I
I've
know.
heard.
She had a
Now
whole
I've
bunch.
a whole bunch of it, right? And I'm like, you know what? Show your dog. Hey, I got a cute little dog. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, that's fun. But you roll open this whole giant thing that's bigger than most the people's like refrigerators, and it's all stocked up. Who stocked
Nice.
that up in this pandemic,
Nice.
Jeff? Where did they get all that ice cream from? And it's everywhere, right?
No,
So
no. Did
the
they have it at
whole
Publix?
well, Publix is our local store down here, and if you guys don't know, Jeff and I live pretty close together, in a sense of, I don't know, about 30 minutes away, but Jeff drives fast, so it's about 20, 22 minutes.
I need
Now,
15, 20.
it might even be closer right now, I'll be honest with you. See you later, Roy. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. Yeah, Florida only has
Yeah,
21
fly
million
safe.
people, but Florida's bigger than, I think did Florida surpass New York? I'm pretty sure it did. I got to find this stat.
Population-wise?
Yeah,
I
pretty
think our
sure
population is what,
21
25
million says
million,
Doc.
21, 22?
Doc Helm. I think
No,
we were neck and neck with well, you know what
with New
happened? I
York.
mean, if you live in South Florida, we call it New York South because everyone came down here. And I was a little bit
That's
disappointed with the
true.
governor, right? Because when this thing broke out in New York, everybody scattered like roaches. Now, all the New Yorkers were like gone. They jumped on planes. Where did they go? Did they want to go to New Hampshire? No. South Carolina? Uh-uh. Did they want to go to Montana? No. They wanted to go to Florida, right? Because that's where their other houses are. They were driving cars, renting cars, and they were coming down here. And you know what our governor said? He goes, if you come down from New York, can you just shelter in place? Yeah, okay. There's beaches and beautiful weather. Yeah, I think I'll do that. I thought that was the goofiest thing I ever heard. How about you stop the flights coming in here? That would have
That's
been
right. That would have
nice.
been nice. That would have been perfect.
So, Jeff, where do you
Hey,
think the most outbreaks are in Florida? They are in Miami, and
Miami,
65% of the deaths have been in Miami. And where did they
Miami,
come from? New York.
Miami, New York. Of
Miami.
course they came from New York. I mean,
Welcome to Miami.
we didn't stop the flights coming from New York, but they did put some checkpoints at the border.
Well,
So if you're driving into Florida, then you got the checkpoints. If you're flying into Florida, come on in.
come
Just
on in,
fly.
says Connie. That's Brad Kime's famous line, and we had Brad on not too long ago. Yeah, so I think the road forward is I think we're going to figure some stuff out. I think really the community is going to come together when we bring it back to digital currency and assets. Guys, one of the things I really want you to realize is how early you are in this whole thing. And sometimes we thought, well, this is 1995 with the internet. It might be earlier than that. But when it swings around and everything starts going south, now we found out somebody put out a pretty cool tweet. I wish I could basically quote it verbatim, but someone said, yeah, I guess in a pandemic, Bitcoin isn't the safe haven. They were basically making the point that any other time an economic stress, just not the pandemic, just not now, Jeff. Any
I
other time,
know.
it's all right.
Skip it.
There's no beach in Sebring, Florida. Well, that's not good, Doc Column. What are you going
No.
to do? We live so
Uh,
close to the beach. And Jeff, how
beach.
often do you go to the beach? I'm whiter. I'm the
Well,
whitest white guy in Florida right now.
well, we used to go to the beach. I would go for sunrise. So if you want to stay away from when the riffraff show up at the beach, so you got to go there before the sun rises. So you get there for sunrise. I used to take my son when he was younger religiously every Saturday and Sunday, but we get there for sunrise. We get there, I don't know, now the sunrise at what, 6 o'clock, 6:30. Get down there.
Whoa, Jeff's doing a little bit of. Jeff, you're cutting out a little bit here. I don't know. I'm gonna have to jump in and save you. It's a fun face you're making right now, though. Bop, 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 bop. Somehow I lost you there. You had this weird face like this.
Uh,
You're right in the middle of your. I don't know. Something happened to you. But hey, Dan, the
I don't know.
XRP
It was
man.
all good.
So he says he's safe here in Cleveland, but
Nice.
nobody goes to Cleveland. Now, Dan, don't take offense to this. I grew up outside of Buffalo, New York, right at like Niagara Falls, New York. And you know what made us feel good in the morning when we woke up?
You
We
were
used to
Cleveland.
say, hey, at least we're not Cleveland. That's what we used to tell ourselves. We'd be like, I know it sucks here, but at least we're not
Yo,
Cleveland.
but the Cleveland used to have the flats.
They did, but we used to call
And
it
the
the
flats
mistake
are
by the
pretty cool.
lake. Okay, that's what we used to say. And I'm sorry we said that because I went to Cleveland and had a great time.
Cleveland was a lot
Um,
of fun.
Cleveland is a lot of fun. It really is a lot of fun. There's some cool people there, and I have some friends there. I kind of kid about that, but you know, Cleveland does have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Jeff.
I didn't know that.
They
Toledo,
do.
not so much.
Yeah. So I mean, but you know, Columbus, I've been too often too. I got friends in Columbus, but you know what? Cleveland rocks, as they say, and it's true. And
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Cleveland rocks, man.
Uh,
Well, that's where where rock and roll was coined. It was
uh,
who was the DJ that did that? I'm sure Dan the XRP man knows. Can't think of it offhand, but somebody knows.
uh,
Simon Bickerton says, "Hey, I think the pandemic and lack of physical metals will amplify the BTC halving." That's an interesting
hmm,
thought. What do you think about
yeah,
that?
I think that's interesting. I still don't know exactly what the halving is going to, if it's going to have the impact that everybody thinks, but um, we can wait and see. I want to, if it does have that impact, there's going to be more FOMO behind it than anything else. But what's interesting is that we see a lot of similarities in terms of coming out of an economic crisis that we're going to have to figure out. Similar to, if you think on the back of 2008, you get Bitcoin, and so then we went through that whole period of time, and that was as a reaction to the economic meltdown in 2008. So now that we had 10 years of this establishment in the crypto space, does that mean that the next 10 years are going to be kind of the big, are we going to see the biggest takeoff phase in the next 10 years, considering what happened after that 2008, 2010 period?
Yeah, I want to read this comment too. Vepro run up to the halving, the lull down for a few months, and the lack of supply pulls BTC up, which drags the alts with it. Yeah, and you know it was kind of fun to see a little bit of movement with XRP. You know, the alts are tied just for one thing only, because right now Bitcoin is king, right? I think it always will be. Now, I don't necessarily know it'll be the biggest market, at number one in the market cap, but really market cap is when we look at market cap, it doesn't really do anything. It's just something we used in stocks. We always bring this old tech over here as to try to put a semblance of balance to it. It's like, well, this is how much big the market cap is. Doesn't necessarily talk about use case, doesn't really address that. And if you look at some of the things that are happening with Bitcoin, I'm really excited about the DeFi space, especially when I look at Ethereum, when I look at their blockchain, I look at the smart contracts, and there's a lot of stuff. I mean, we almost could spin up a whole decentralized finance show just talking about some of the stuff you really don't hear enough about in the news. All these companies are spinning up, and the smart contracts are really they're going to come into their own. I think we're going to see that in the next year to 2 years, maybe three. But I think everyone's going to start leveraging that. And anything that's anything, doesn't matter what business you're in or what section you're in, it's all going to come down to blockchain. And the reason is it's trackable. And I can't wait to get the
Right.
government on it, because I want to start tracking this spending, right? Somebody gets the special interest group gets it, they throw it out to somebody, and everyone's like, well, we don't know. What happened to the money? Well, I don't know. I gave it to this guy, and then oh no, blockchain will be tracking that, right? There will be other organizations and other companies that will be the same way we look at data companies. There will be different kind of data companies. They'll be watchdogs. They'll be looking at where the money's going. They'll be looking at where the money's getting transferred. When I say money, but basically digital assets are going to move back and forth, in and out, and we'll have a whole brand new industry right there. Whoa, what the heck was
Oh,
that? It just freaked me out,
hit,
yo. Freaked
hit the
me
wrong
out.
hit the wrong button. On a parting note, it's interesting. You're talking about blockchain, and we're talking about supply chain, and talking about all these different things
On the
of
chain.
on the chain. Don't forget about on the chain. And if you're down with on the chain, just make sure you let us know in the comments below. And if you're new, make sure you hit that subscribe button. That sometimes helps as well. We also like the thumbs up. But what I was thinking about from a blockchain perspective, having a conversation with somebody this past week, even though today's Tuesday, this past week is just Monday. It seems like it's already Friday. I've lost track of the
But
week.
there's this
But
day, that day, and the other day. No
there,
one even
and
knows what
there's a
day it
lot
is
of other
anymore.
days. So days are irrelevant now.
Or
But
last week,
anyhow,
or yesterday.
or last week. So here's a guy that is certifying. He has a company that is in the certification process or certification business to certify products that are in China or elsewhere to verify that it's authentic.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that he's doing right now, as we speak, he's implementing blockchain and Internet of Things and all these different elements from this space and building them as part of the tracking process and the authenticating process right now focused on masks. So he
Wow.
wants to. So one thing I didn't realize is that the base product that goes into making the mask is made out of some plastic pellets that are manufactured over in Pennsylvania. So they manufacture these plastic pellets in Pennsylvania, then they ship that raw material to China that gets spun down into the fibers for the masks. So what he's doing is in this authenticating process through the blockchain of this whole supply chain is identifying the origin of the raw material, the shipping process, the arrival at the facility, the manufacturing of the product, the documentation of the testing, all of that, everything goes into the reporting, all tracked on the blockchain. Interesting.
Wow, I like that. It's somebody really, really thinking ahead, and if you track it on the blockchain, you can know exactly where it's been and where it's going. But I'm wondering if that process is like really dangerous. And they start taking the pellets and spitting them. I wonder if it's like I wouldn't say toxic, but I wonder if there's some kind of danger in the process of actually doing that. I want a big shout out to Notorious. He says buckle up. I don't know what font he uses, man, but anytime I try to tag him when he's in there, it's like he uses some weird fonts, and I don't know, man, but it's
Doesn't work.
Notorious XRP. He says buckle up, and he's absolutely right. We have to buckle this puppy up.
Yeah. Interesting.
One mullet. We started elective surgeries, so more people are not many people are confirmed COVID, but a few potential, still allowing for one visitor per patient. That's interesting, Vet Bro. Yeah, I know. And when I got that news this morning, I was, about, my mother being in the hospital. My biggest worry was the fact that A, family couldn't be there, but also two, man, you're going to ground zero there,
Yeah.
because when you think about it, where does it walk in? Right through the emergency room.
Except they're all empty.
They are all empty, Jeff. That's a whole other discussion. We could rant on that for a long time. It's weird how
We
people
could.
are. What is going on with that? I think the whole thing. I think we're all, in the herd mentality. I look at Sweden. I applaud Sweden. I think they did a brilliant thing because they didn't bow down to what the rest of the world did. Said, yeah, hey, we're gonna do some physical distancing. By the way, physical distancing is not social. Social distancing. We're now doing virtual distancing between us and our audience. But the physical distancing, yeah, a little bit of wearing masks, but they kept stuff open. They were doing stuff. Yeah, they had a lot of deaths. Now, comparatively, if you look at the deaths that Sweden had, it was something around 1,400, and they have, I think, 5.6, almost 6 million people. Let's talk about California. 40 million people, bigger than a lot of countries, right? Bigger than Norway as well, and they reopened. You got to look at this. They had 1,500 deaths. Now, I feel like this herd mentality. I feel like, you know what, this is how things work. It's going to move through people. People are going to
Right.
build up antibodies. There has to be something good coming out of this. But you know what? Cautionary tale. That's where we are. There had to be something good there.
But there were two studies that came out in the past week. One at Stanford University and one from the University of Miami, and both of them put the death rate based on death to those that were infected, those that weren't infected. They put it at 0.03% in the study at Stanford University, and the study in Miami at 0.02%. So it's on par with the flu. So some of these said, like the doctors that got banned, these reports, Sweden, elsewhere, if you look at the death rate, it's about 200 per million people. And so in Spain and in Italy, it was 400 per million. So their rate was a little bit higher, but Sweden is the same, 200 per million. So you don't have some, big upset that one is worse than the other. And the one thing that those doctors were saying in the report was showing, if you extrapolate those that were infected versus those that weren't, of all those that were tested, and it's about 10% of the population. So if you look at California, they're estimating that about 4 million people in California may have been infected. So, but why don't we hear about that stuff other than, and it gets banned? Crazy stuff.
Look at this comment right here. Simon Bickerton says Australia only has 28 people in the hospital. I mean, we're not talking
amazing.
about Sydney, right? That is kind of insane. And I had to put comedian Carl Lewis on. He said he always wondered what a white Michael Jackson would look like. I don't know where that came from, but I just thought it was funny. While you're going on your rant, I'm reading that. I'm like, I don't know, I don't know what that means, but I don't know. But he knew something about gloves, didn't he? Huh? Was he ahead of his time?
That's right.
He always wore a mask too. I don't know.
And a
There's
mask
picture-
too. He always had the mask.
Yeah, interesting. I think maybe he was a time traveler. You want to start that whole thing? Maybe he was a time traveler.
His
That's
mask was
funny,
cool,
Carl. I
though.
don't know. I don't know what's all that about. First person hodler for life personally knew he passed away last night from COVID-19, was high risk and had major underlying health issues. Well, so we're very sorry to hear that.
Sorry to hear that.
Hodler for life, man. That is, it's always sad when you know somebody personally, and man, it is a rough. It is rough, man. So you know what? Condolences go out to you, man.
Yep. The Queen of England.
And Matt is going. The Queen of England always wore gloves. She sure did. But I mean, yeah. And who's going to challenge the Queen of England? I might. No, Jeff will. Jeff will go toe to toe. I'd like to see the Queen of England and Jeff playing some ping pong. That would be weird. Can you imagine her with the like crown and everything? And Jeff, and she's doing it all proper, like she has.
But the problem is that she's a pro. I think.
But she's sipping the tea like this, and Jeff's like, bam. He's like,
right. But she used to play the pro circuit in ping pong. I don't think many people realize that.
I'll be honest with you, Jeff. I didn't know any of that stuff was true. So it is kind of
probably
weird.
Not. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, man. It's highly suspicious, that comment. I have to be honest with you. I'm not sure. I'm like, the pro circuit.
I don't think it's authentic. And she was getting paid in Bitcoin.
Nah, right. Okay, now you're really spinning a tail. But I could really almost believe bowling, but I'm not going for the ping pong. But anyway, I'm not buying it. But I will say this, guys, go to onthechain.io, if you want to scroll to the bottom. We're going to start putting out a newsletter pretty soon. And, look, just I wanted to say thank you for the support. And, Jeff, what else do you have to take us out?
I don't know. I heard that there's a show coming up tomorrow night, but I have no idea what it's called.
It's called the XRP Minute. Let me remind you. It's called the XRP Minute with Chip. And that's me. It's with me.
And then what about Thursday? There's something special coming up on Thursday. We don't want to talk about too much, but we're going to be doing a deep dive into something that is impacting many in the space. Many in the space, especially in our community and similar communities. And we're going to deep dive and we're going to unravel it. It's pretty incredible. So, Jeff, what do you say? I think we can get out of here because that's it. That's all we got for tonight. Well, let's check out Chip tomorrow night on XRP Minute. Let's check out the deep dive on Thursday when we go through that. And I believe we might be doing a special live stream coming up Friday night, but I don't know yet. But we'll see how that goes. And then we'll have the HODL review coming up Saturday morning. But tennis might be opening soon. So that's going to be interesting. So with that, I think we're out of here right now.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.